This is AV SuperFriends Off the Rails, an almost regularly scheduled open discussion on audio and video in higher education. We'll sound off about our most brilliant ideas, our dumbest mistakes, and everything in between. And because this conversation will almost certainly go off the rails at some point, we'll end up covering just about everything else. And now, the AV SuperFriends. For June 4th, 2021, it's the AV SuperFriends Off the Rails. Welcome back, everybody. Time for another Friday afternoon podcast adventure. We're a little later than usual today. It doesn't matter to you because we're not live, but we're testing out some new software, and we've been kind of playing with it because we enjoy AV and software and streaming and recording, and it's cool stuff, and we're nerding out. My name's Chris Decker. I'm joined today by Justin, Larry, Jamie, and Mark. And today's show, first we're going to discuss a series of industry pet peeves we've been talking about. We've been angry about a few things. We're going to go through some of those. We're going to review a recommended room arrangement from Zoom about about building out a Zoom room. But first, we're going to do some AV news. So this came out just today. I threw this in for the show just today. I hope you guys got a chance to look at it. But AVIXA sent out the response to their, I believe it was a spring 2020, whatever, salary and job satisfaction survey. This went out to a whole bunch of people. Apparently, I took part in it, but don't remember doing it. So I don't know what that tells you. But asked some questions. They asked about salary and things like that, and I think we can ignore that because it's, A, I'm pretty sure those numbers are made up, and B, I don't think they directly reflect what we're seeing in higher ed anyway, so nuts to that. But what was interesting, and this is really why I wanted to bring this up, was a few weeks ago we talked about the value of various types of certifications. And this one tried to put kind of almost like, not quite a monetary value, but they tried to put like a salary bump value on it. About specifically AVIXA CTS, CTSI, and CTSD certifications. And I think this, whether or not the numbers are quite correct, I think this does echo our kind of conclusion from a few weeks ago that the CTSD in particular is one that people consider that has a lot of value to it. So somebody has a CTSD, that is something that shows that they have a good technical level or good level of technical expertise above and beyond that of a standard CTS. So what do you guys, did you guys get a chance to look at this? What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think it was, like you said, it did reflect kind of what we assumed and what we talked about. In total, it's like, I don't think it's necessarily 100% higher ed. I don't think it kind of correlates directly.
I don't think it was ever supposed to be.
It wasn't supposed to.
It definitely doesn't correlate. Yeah.
And I like it, and it kind of validates some things. But I think, in a side conversation we had, it's more indicative of kind of like what your next move shall be, right? And so specific in higher education, just because you were to go get one of those certifications, whatever, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a pay bump. Now, if you were to leave and go to some other institution and you had that credential, I think that may be more along what you could expect to see potentially as a pay line, but I don't think you're going to necessarily automatically get that. But that was kind of my takeaway. And I also think that, labor costs and things like that right now, this will be a little bit outdated in the next 24 hours.
Yeah. I did find it humorous that the section of the report that Chris is referring to informs everyone that they should focus on certifications rather than on education. And this was put out by a company that specializes in certifications. So at that point, you just
that's an interesting take. Yeah, I like your kind of cynical conspiratorial thought on that. Hey, what you really need to do is not just take our classes, but you need to get our certification. So
and here's how you can
probably not up. What they meant. I think they were probably trying to say that because I think we all know people like this, and we do it too. You take a whole bunch of online training courses and webinars, and I take this online thing from this manufacturer, that manufacturer. That's great, but that doesn't. And I can list all that on my resume and things I've done. But having 3 or 4 letters after your name and a signature, I think shows more value. I think it was probably their point. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'll drop this in the description of the show so anyone wants to look at it. But the long and short of it is, and again, this was AVIXA's response based on survey responses. This is AVIXA's number saying that I guess if maybe we phrase it this way. A CTS, adding a CTS certification to your repertoire would get you about an 8% pay bump. And Mark, I think to your point, I don't think that means immediately. There are some places that do reward that immediately, but most places is probably your next job would be, you could expect at least 8% more. CTSI, they say 12%. I don't know if this is cumulative. I don't know if it's from each to the next. And then CTSD is 23%, which is not anything to, turn your nose up at. But I think the idea is, Mark, you're exactly right. It's not your current job. I'm not going to come back to you and say, hey, great, here's an extra 23% of your salary. It's probably would open the door to future possibilities at which you could expect a higher salary.
Yeah, that's out there who's looking at the other stuff where the grass is greener. Go for the grass is greener thing.
Yeah, we get little stipends, if you will, for when we get certifications or degrees, but we don't get a 20% raise just because we got a certification. You get 20% raise because of your holistic approach to your job, right?
I get that. I've worked at a lot of places, and I've never worked at a place where they give you a bump just for earning a certification of any sort. So,
yeah, be cool.
Anyway, I just thought that was interesting. That came out today. Worth talking about. Again, that link is in the description of the show. Other item I wanted to talk about. Let me open up this file, this awesome PDF here. So Commercial Integrator sent out an email, and I believe the email, and this would maybe something to think about, the email itself was titled like The Future of Distance Learning, which caught my eye. But of course, when you actually look at the file, it said it was kind of a deep dive into how people are using distance learning. I was like, wait, that's different. Now let me start reading into this. And they have, it's like a 10 or 12 page article of sorts. What was interesting is there's survey results in here, and they talk about, they got this information from talking with education experts, people in K-12 and higher ed. They don't name any of them. There's no indication at all who those people are or what they said individually. The only people quoted are from integrators or consultants, which immediately makes me a little skeptical of the information here. But it is, if we take it at face value, it's a holistic view of kind of how, from the integration standpoint, how integrators are responding to education requests for general distance learning, the larger, term distance learning, quote unquote, of whatever that might mean, in hybridizing their classroom spaces post-pandemic. So it is some interesting numbers. I don't know if you guys got a chance to read through that. Any thoughts?
No thoughts.
Crickets.
Nobody
no
cared.
No. No
I think
we're
all kind of like, we're living it, right? So it's like, okay, tell me. So you're telling me that we're going to be doing this? Is this something that's coming along? It's like, obviously we've been doing it.
We are doing it.
Yeah, we're doing it. And so,
again, if you're doing it now, it's not the future. All this classroom of the future way of doing things. Well, this is how we're doing it now. That's, again, it's not the future.
The one thing that really caught my eye in here is if you go through and drill down as to the type of equipment they're using, it says what type of technology you typically implement in a distance learning project. Microphone, only 56%. I'm like, how are you doing distance learning projects without a microphone? So I don't know how that was worded.
A lot of sign language class. Yeah. We sign everything. So video's important.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how it was worded. It may have been worded in such a way that got left off. That seems odd. So I would take this with a grain of salt. But
we talked about that though. So it's like, how do people recognize what it is they're doing? So they're talking to folks, and it's like, for years, distance education had a very specific definition. And I think when you start using that term kind of just as the Kleenex of online learning, you're kind of, people are like, well, is that the ITV model, or is that Zoom? Is that just kind of using, a learning platform, or like, so what does that really mean? And then we all know that it's a blend of all of these different things. And so, but an admin or an installer are going to have two different perspectives as to what it is they're actually doing and what they're offering. And so my guess is we're going to see a whole lot more of these types of articles about, oh yeah, this is, distance education is a thing. And guess what? It's growing. So be prepared. So I don't know, continue to do what it is that you do well.
And I think the proliferation of the all-in-wonder thing, the all-in-wonder soundbar, the all-in-wonder microphone, the all-in-wonder camera.
Yep.
And so when you start breaking it down into what are you installing, well, we know that the all-in-wonder system from the Tron has a microphone in it and speakers and the camera. But you didn't do it individually. So what did you install? I installed a thing. And I think that's what's bothering me about some of this. And I did, to be honest, I didn't read this particular article because I'm kind of fed up with these.
We're gonna stop the show. You go read it. We'll come back.
Yeah. Well, I'm fed up with these kind of articles, right? Because I've read about 70 of them over the last couple of months, and we've talked about a lot of them on here. And I keep finding things where it's like you deployed a solution, kinda. It's distance ed, it's hybrid, it's this is the way of the future, and it's 50-person classroom, and they put in a sound bar.
You know what it reminds me of?
We get back to that. I'm just kind of, maybe like Mark said, we're in the trenches. We're putting it in. We're on this show talking about it month after month after month after month. And then these articles come out, and to Chris's point of, you didn't reference any educators. You reference consultants and manufacturers. And I know I was the one they talked to. Obviously, it was me because I didn't read the article. But But I do want to know. I want to like, come on, let's break this down, and maybe manufacturers aren't experts in education, and maybe we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, maybe. You know what that reminds me of? The all-in Wonder Bar.
Same point, or at the same time, every day I'm hearing more and more universities who are coming completely back in the fall. And so I understand what they're doing.
IU's doing it.
We're UNCG is. We're preparing for the new high online future. Well, that's great, but it looks like the future is going to look a lot like what it was, at least until the hand is forced.
Yeah, I think it's a short-term knee-jerk reaction. We're all in person, 100% in person. And, even though we've never been ever 100% in person. So,
I think the difference will be we've talked about this before too. It's that gray area. Yes, you're back 100% in person, but the instructor now knows that they have some flexibility and some leniency, and they may get to the point where they're like, okay, we're scheduled Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but really the only day I want you here is Wednesday. Mm-hmm. The other 2 days we're going to be a little bit more flexible, and they didn't really clear that. Look, I don't have any real numbers on this, but we all know this happens. They didn't really clear that with anybody in admin. They're just kind of going with it. And we've all been in classes like that, right? Where the instructors just kind of
and Jamie, we talked a few weeks ago about the not disconnect, but we had two different surveys. One kind of to the admin saying, how many of you are doing online? They're like 30%. And then one was students and said, how many of you are interested in continuing online stuff? Like 70%. So there's two different numbers there. So I think to your point, you're 100% right, but it's going to be driven by the students saying, hey, we want that flexibility. If my class meets every day at 10 a.m., why not, why don't we have the flexibility? Hey, 2 days a week we're meeting online, or 2 days, whatever that might be. I don't know what that model is going to look like. And that's the sort of thing where, Justin, you're right. It's a knee-jerk reaction. Let's get people back together. People want to be there. We missed functionally an entire school year of the quote-unquote college experience, and I would agree with that. If I was paying tuition last year, I'd be pissed. But so let's bring everyone back to try to rebuild that. But hey, we did all this stuff. We made all these things work. People are starting to like this flexibility. Exactly right. And they're going to want that capability. So we have to, and I hate the term hybridize. We need a better term for this. We have to prepare our learning spaces to be able to live in that world. Even if there's no, medical healthcare reason we need to do it, people like the flexibility, and I think it only adds to that college experience.
So I think there's more. There's more to it, though.
On campus. They don't want to be back in the classroom necessarily.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of everybody's coming back all the time is more of a staff and personnel thing. Like if it's an edict across the entire deal, then you don't get these onesie twosie fight backs, right? It's just, no, this is the way it is. And then you'll see it just kind of pitter away, right? That edict will do what it does.
Universities, like their product is that experience. Like they're not all out there just selling the online experience. That student interactivity that's happening in the classroom, that is part of the product that they're actually selling. But I think there's more to this collaborative technology conversation, because I've met with folks that are really excited that aren't even thinking about it as a way to have students staying at home. I have people using it and thinking about it from the lab perspective of how can I use this now to enhance the disability play on this, right? And so I can have students now and have people out in the field with phones and things, leveraging Zoom and different applications that they're getting real field experience now that they were never able to actually have before. And so that's the thought that I'm actually welcoming and wanting to see more. It's like, okay, can we get past this, like students sitting and watching screens from their dorm or their bedroom at home across the country? And like, I want to hear about the faculty members who are excited. They want to say, you know what? All this stuff makes me think how I can position my curriculum differently or more effectively to make use of this new technology. And I'd like to see the magazine start talking to those champions. I don't care about a marketing team that wants to sell cameras and microphones.
Yes.
Tell me people who want to do it and be actually effective in using it well.
Yeah,
Exactly. The people who are focused on the learning technology aspects of it and the new avenues it opens up, not just the convenience factor of people choosing to stay home.
And I'm seeing and I'm pushing a lot from my side, but I'm also seeing the receptiveness of this push of use it for your everyday class too, right?
Yeah.
Because now we all know that we put in screens that are undersized. We all know that lighting conditions suck. We all know that shit happens and the students miss parts of the message. But if they have their laptop or their device and it's 16 inches from their face, they're probably going to get it. They can screen capture it. They can do whatever they want. And it's just a supplement to the message. And the technology is there to supplement the message and make it more accessible. And I'm with you, Mark. It's not just about staying home, but it's also we can use it to reinforce all kinds of stuff. So,
well, and
that's where I think we're going to see
here. There is a comment in the article which was legit, but again, they're asking the wrong people. Where somebody says pedagogy is the most important part of this. I'm like, yeah, no crap. But then they're saying
Larry said that.
Yeah, it was Larry forced that in the article. But no, it says I'm starting to hear. So I like the way this is phrased. I'm starting to hear conversations among technology leaders, whatever that means, about what they're going to do with all this stuff they bought. I'm like, that just again, this is when someone's talking to the wrong person. So
what do you mean stuff?
It's all stuff, man.
They're putting the cart before the horse. It's a solution looking for a product or for a problem. We've seen this done time and time again. A lot of people we bought a whole bunch of things. Now let's figure out how to actually use it. Ideally,
sounds like a K through 12 problem.
Well, it very well could be. But I think that a lot of that was rushed because of the situation last spring. Hey, let's buy as much crap as we can to do whatever we can. Here we go. And let's figure out how to best use that. I think that ideally that would happen in reverse, but now we're seeing it happen kind of backwards with, well, now I have to, Jamie and Mark, to your point, I have this stuff now. How can I use this to enhance the teaching and learning experience? Because otherwise I'm not really using these cameras. So, and
that's something that we did. I feel like we were really smart about. We didn't dive into the deep end when COVID hit. We just dipped our toe into the pool, meaning we bought a bunch of crappy USB cameras for microphones and cameras and deployed them throughout all these classrooms, waited for feedback. And now we're getting, hey, that
people
was
using
okay.
Them? Yeah.
We need something better. And now we're seeing basically metrics come back. Oh, so you're actually using this for that. Other people are just using it for doc cam.
You can't make decisions based on numbers.
So Justin, we can still use those doc cams going into the future. And we didn't blow a bunch of money on all-in-wonder bars or whatever that we don't know what to do.
Justin, I'm going to bring up that exact point when we get to our next segment. So any last thoughts here on this survey from Commercial Integrator on distance learning? Again, it was titled, so a lot of you may have seen the email, it was titled The Future of Distance Learning. It's absolutely not that. It was more of, here's a survey of what some integrators are doing with general distance technology, and hopefully it'll get used. So
go use it
for what it may be, but
if you bought it,
I don't think it's a true snapshot of the higher ed market, but from the other side. So tell you what, hey, let's drop a commercial in right here.
There's a great new digital magazine from Higher Ed AV Media found at higheredav.com, and we do a special monthly show where we actually stay on topic. It's a show where we try to really focus on a single topic and break it down into AV SuperFriends style. That's AV SuperFriends on topic, found at avsuperfriends.com, higheredav.com, iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and wherever else you get your podcasts from.
So for this topic, we want to talk about some things that, and Larry, I think you brought this up, just called it industry pet peeves. And it's things that bother us. It's not specific to any one industry. I do want to say we're not going to call out manufacturers or products. A lot of these things we may discuss here in the next couple of minutes. You probably know what we're talking about. We're not going to do that. But Justin, you brought it up, so I'm going to start because I'm talking right now. And you brought it up the last time, and it was on my list of things of pet peeves. And so this could be things. Let me back up and say, I think we phrase this as, what are manufacturers, integrators, vendors, other universities even, what are they doing that is bothering us? What's a pet peeve of something going on right now? And I want to speak to the one that Justin mentioned just a few minutes ago, and that is universities, colleges, schools in general, who put out their little webcam because, hey, I need something right now for COVID response. Here's my basic webcam, my tiny little device, whatever. But they have zero intention of going back and addressing that with better gear or more appropriate gear. And so they are done. And they are sitting back, resting on their laurels, and that's it. And that bothers the crap out of me because I think, hey, putting a webcam in every room based on the situation last spring, that made perfect sense. Do what you can, get what you can. We need a base level of some sort of technology in here for this, but that we all know from an AV standpoint that it's absolutely not appropriate. But if it's there as a Band-Aid, great. But what's phase 2? And there's a lot of people out there who had, and maybe this is hopefully changing this summer, bad news for them based on supply chain issues, but I think they had zero intention of ever going back into. They were like, look, we're done. We did it. Webcam.
And see, that ties into
ones that really bother me are those 360 cameras. I hate those.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
And that ties into something that really bugs me is, why do they think it's still okay to do that? Like, what's the real reason? The real reason is
post-COVID stuff?
Yeah, like what you just said. Why is that still happening? Why they leave it in place? There's 2 reasons for that. It's not being used, or it's not being reported as a problem, which means that students aren't complaining. Students don't complain about technology because they don't want, and I've asked students this on our campus, and they've said, we don't want to fail the class because if we complain that we can't hear the teacher or see the content, we're afraid of the teacher and what they'll react. And that's kind of other things going on, because if you're a student in a class with 50 other students there, and no one else is complaining, are you going to raise your hand and say, I can't see or I can't hear or whatever? No, they're not going to complain. And so we've enabled some things on the back end. I brought this up to a lot of people that create surveys, and they do surveys about end of semester things that happen at the university, and one of those is classrooms. And so we've talked with those people, and they're going to start putting in certain questions relating to technology in classrooms so we can get direct feedback from instructors. But that's still not helping unless we talk to the students. And that goes to my point of what pisses me off a lot about working in the AV field is I find, and it's more of a process problem, I find at the university and my business and everywhere I go, a lot of the times I'm talking to people paying for the equipment, not consuming the AV or running the AV. And when you do that, for instance, when you throw a document camera in a classroom, oh yeah, that's fine from an administrator or manager.
When you say fine, you mean that's good enough?
Well, I guess that's what they're saying. They're like, yeah, that should be fine, or that's good. I'm like, well, okay, you listen to it for 30 seconds on a recording, right?
When no one was in the room and it was perfect.
Exactly. Well, no one was in the room and it echoed, and they still think it's okay. And that's kind of my point is, where's the threshold of okay enough, good enough versus standards, and us trying to implement the correct standards. And then all of a sudden, you're too expensive. You're gold plated. We don't need that crap. This $200 thing's good enough. That stuff drives me insane, because now you're having to explain the environment and the experience, and then trying to set expectations. I don't know. It's a problem.
Fair enough. You see a lot.
That's my rant.
That whole like department store engineering stuff. Well, I could save you $25,000. All you need is this one little thing right here, this adapter. You use this mythical VGA to HDMI adapter that I got on.
And the people making that decision aren't teaching in the class, and they're not taking the class. You know, so
yeah, it's a
whatever.
It's an issue.
I'm done. I'm done with my rant.
You're done.
Mark, what you got?
What do I got? Well, mine's a little bit outside of like specifically within, marketing, but I have a couple different things on here. One is kind of manufacturers who just say, this is network stuff. Just go ahead and put it in your network. And we all know that very seldom do we just throw it on our network and it works. I wish things had a wholesale different thing. And if I'm stealing somebody else's thing, I'm sorry, but it bothers me. Like when people say, just put on your enterprise network. And it's like, well, whose enterprise network? And what network is that? Because oftentimes I find these things that are supposed to just work on your network don't work on my network.
It works fine in my home office. What the heck?
And so, and as we get to different show floors around the country, as it happens, I challenge everybody who's listening and to say, will it work on my enterprise network, or is this designed to just work on components that make up the same pieces of my enterprise network? And what configurations do I need to have for this to actually work? And is your AV over IP, AV over EN enterprise network? That's one of my pet peeves that have bothered me, because simple things, right? Like discovery of devices don't necessarily work if you don't have all the things configured on your enterprise network. So I don't know what even is the definition of enterprise network anymore, because apparently things that are designed for enterprise network don't work on mine. But hey, so please provide associated information about what it needs to work on the network. Other things that kind of bother me lately, outside groups who kind of do the same thing that Justin mentioned, where they say, hey, I want to do all this stuff. I want this. This is what I want. I want this bell and this whistle and all this thing configured like this. Is that your standard? Well, no, it's not. Our standards are our standards. And are you asking me to change the standards to meet your thing that you're proposing? Because that's not a standard. And we don't use any of those things. So why would it be our standard? And so
Mark, question for you. When you say standard, define standard in that context.
Standard configurations, components, things that we have. Yeah, like people say, oh, I want to do this room. And I saw this thing on Oprah last night, and I really want to have this in my room. Is that something you guys support? Well, no. Like the fact that you're asking me, we don't. Have you seen it anywhere else on campus?
Usually they actually support it after they just bought 20 of them.
And so
we just put these in all our rooms. Can you support it?
Can you support them? And so it's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, what are you really asking me? You've clearly thought about this is what you want. And so and what I unpack from that is, can you please be responsible for this when I buy it and it doesn't work for me? Is that something you can do? And obviously we're all here saying, well, no, that's not what we do. That's not a standard configuration, but I get a lot of that. And we're seeing more of that when people are returning. There's like, they all think they have the silver bullet solution, that they found it because it worked great in their kitchen. Why doesn't every classroom have this?
And it was $49 on Amazon.
It was $49. Yeah. I mean, come on. I mean, some people may even got free ones after they did a survey. So that, but those are kind of the big main things. And then my last one, I'm sorry if I'm ranting here. Groups and organizations that speak of all things technology is just servers and software, because I see that a lot. And even budgets are just based around all of our IT needs is just servers and software. When we all know we do a whole hell of a lot more than just servers and software out here. I don't know the last time your projector was a software solution, or any of your control systems and hardware and UIs were just software or server. But there's a lot more to the human experience than just software and servers. I'm off my pedestal now. I'm passing the baton to somebody else. Now I'm all worked up like Justin. Sorry.
Nice. Well, since you were talking about those silver bullet devices, my big one is wireless screen sharing. I've been using wireless screen sharing, 10 years or more. And I've yet to find one that checks all the boxes. I keep finding ones that do more and more things each year, and they're getting really, really complicated, but I haven't found any that do it any better than they have in a while. They either have ridiculous service fees attached to them, less than ideal security, less than ideal network operability.
You're checking all the boxes. You're getting all of them.
I can't get that
all the boxes
particular
they want,
device on my network. Weird little dongle things.
Ooh, I like that.
Or like there's always something that just says, well, this won't work.
Or so you have to go get a special application before you can even get it to work.
You got to download this from a bootleg app store somewhere.
Admins to make it work on your system. Like there's always something. It's like we've been doing wireless display 12 years probably. Like by now there should be a Kleenex. There should be one that just, that's what the industry standard uses. because it's cheap, it's secure, it works on your network, and it doesn't require you to install anything.
You mean you don't want like this overly built software that you have to put like an 8-hour training session for your faculty to learn how to use it? You don't want that? You don't like that you can change all the different colors of your pens on your interactive board?
Wait. I don't know why you would need all that, because if you just got the server and the licensing cost that goes with it.
Mark, if you had the software version, it'd be great. It's all software.
Exactly. Like,
and that comes at a premium cost of $5,000 per day.
Per user.
Per person, yes.
Per user, per student and teacher and employee, times 50.
I had a company come to me and they said, hey, so you can buy our little hardware device, and it was okay. And they said, oh, and we just made a software application that you can just put on every room's computer. It's like, that's awesome. Now, how do they use it? Well, first of all, they just open up whatever bring your own devices, and they just share to the computer. Similar to AirParrot, but this was a AV company, right? And I go, awesome. Computers are locked down and they have to log in. What? Most people that bring their own is because they don't want to log in. So how do they do it? Well, you have to log in and start it.
Conversation too.
And I'm like,
network convo. Let's talk about that.
If it doesn't work on an enterprise network, Mark, to your point, maybe it doesn't work in an enterprise environment, just in general. That has
so maybe these manufacturers don't design on enterprise networks. Could that be a thing? Are they all just people in garages at home on their like Wi-Fi router, like just kind of putting stuff together?
It's kind of like, bring your own device.
Linksys.
Yeah. Bring your own device. Share from your own device. But you have to log into that computer. It's like, why don't I just use the goddamn computer?
So, Larry, to your general pet peeve that wireless sharing should be like Kleenex. It should be ubiquitous. We've been doing it long enough. I mean, we've been buying proprietary devices that do nothing but that for 10 years. I mean, I gave presentations in the early 2000s by using 2 laptops and sharing through VNC screen sharing so I could walk around the room with, remember the early Windows XP tablet PCs from like 2002? So I could use one of those and people were like, what the heck are you doing, sort of thing. But, so that was possible then, and that was almost 20 years ago. Why is this still so difficult? And I will say, from the standpoint of my institution, what we found is actually now that everybody has a Zoom license and a team license and things like that, we're working through these software options. Those are now all integrating a screen sharing kind of quick and dirty. We're going to fire, basically what it does, it fires up an instant meeting and just lets you, just like you can share your screen in any of these online software-based systems now, they're letting you do that through the app on your phone or through the interface on your laptop. And it's, that is good enough. It doesn't look as good as a device that has a hardware encoder and scaling on board and all that. But if I just want to show my document or I just want to show my file I've been working on, it's fine. And
as long as you can log on to the enterprise wireless network, and as long as it's good enough, then all those
there's other issues with that.
Sure.
But to our earlier comment about we need to prepare all our spaces to do some sort of distance or hybrid thing, that's something that the network has to be addressed. But my point being that a lot of us are getting away from this because we found this to be so, just so difficult to manage these systems and so difficult to maintain and deal with the licensing and expensive, or where you have multiple generations of hardware from the same vendor. Then they say, oh, well, we're moving to the Gen 4 version here, and we're going to cut the other ones off from security updates after 6 months. And like, wait, we have 150 of those across campus, and now I have to go back and pull all my monitors down to get those little boxes out because 6 months from now you're just going to stop updating the system. So,
and as they're saying that, they're checking their bank accounts, going, "Yep, that's right, Chris. Yep, nice, yeah."
Mm-hmm. Well, but just in general, that the wireless sharing is something that everyone has this concept of. That's great, I want to do it, but then when because of the amount of hoops they have to jump through to actually do it, they don't. So it's one of those features that I want to make sure that we can still provide that, but is that really worth it? So
yeah, we've deployed, I'll be honest, we've deployed less than 10 immersive Solstice in rooms where it was supposedly we have to have wireless presentation. And you go back and look at the metrics, used once a year, maybe. And then everybody
by
forgets
one of your
how to use them.
testing it.
It's a room check time.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, what are we doing, guys?
But they're untethered. Everybody's untethered. It's going to be so nice.
Walk around the room. You can pick up your 9-pound laptop and walk around. That was always my question years ago.
Flexible.
People want, I want to do wirelessly. It's like that laptop has to live on a lectern table, whatever anyway. So you're not carrying that anywhere. So
What's funny?
I like the wireless stuff
this,
from like students to the presentation, not at all from like faculty to the presentation. Like people oversee that and I just use it that
What's
way.
interesting is we always provide a HDMI aux connection at almost every system we do for BYOD, as most people do. And
Blasphemy.
because of how we handle AirPlay on our network with the Bluetooth Discovery, a lot of people are bringing around their Apple TVs. We have a data on top of the lectern in a lot of places too.
Lord.
What? Where?
Your network's bizarre.
What Wild West world are you living in, man? Like that
It's
just seems
great.
crazy to me.
They plug it up, AirPlay, son of a gun works every time.
AirPlay and Dante on the same network.
Yeah.
Well, it
You
depends
guys
on
do
the subnets.
everything. You have like the best worst case scenario ever going on over there. I
Yeah,
love
it's
it.
you think it
they
would be
either have
awesome.
the best network on the planet or the worst one. I can't tell which. It's one of the two.
I'm not sure either because it's like the Wild West, and you're like, well, I hope that gets there. Hey, look, it did. Hey,
So is everything just working because nobody's there? So you're just getting lucky right now. Like nobody's using it, and you're just like, man, son of a bitch, this works.
A couple other of our pet peeves here. I want to run through real quick on some of these just to throw them out there. But like,
not even gonna let me get into this. God.
Yeah, we gotta let Jamie go. He's like, there's a list. Shit.
There was nothing.
Just
Jamie
wait
has a
my
lot of pet
turn
peeves, though.
For once, oh, buddy.
so I'm going to point out that Jamie did not put anything on the shared document, so ain't nothing there.
failed his homework.
Hey, look, it says Jamie.
It does say Jamie, and then there's
With
nothing. I
nothing
know one of
after
yours is the
I didn't
is the
want you to
vaporware thing.
I didn't want you to steal it. That's why.
Well, I know
It's
one
a
of yours was
secret.
the vaporware announcementware stuff, so we'll bring that up. But real quick, one of them is the when did all these manufacturers, and we just talked about it during our previous segment here on the article from Commercial Integrator, but when did these non-education people become experts in education, which is constantly bothersome?
When there was money to be had.
When there's definitely money to be
And that's a lot to do with all this classroom of the future talk going on. That's just
absolutely
ridiculous right now.
getting
Another
a little
one
tired of that one.
was this adding of feature bloat that nobody wants. We talked about it a bit with the wireless. Some of these wireless sharing boxes do all sorts of things. And even if you have those, go look at the metrics. No one uses any of that. They want to make their screen from their device show up on the monitor at the front. That's all they want. They don't want anything
all they
else
want.
than that.
You know what I found with
Easily
that?
as possible.
What I found
As
was
easy as possible, yes.
the particular device we use, right, has a lot of that bloat in there, right? And what I found is that the folks that really use it, that really use this device, they don't ever use it for wireless sharing of video. They use it for the whiteboard,
The wireless whiteboard.
for the interactive whiteboard. That's what they use it for. They could care less about all the other crap, but the fact that it has a whiteboard app that's similar to Smartboard, they love it. They love it.
Though there's no shortage of ways to do exactly that if that's all they really want.
Yes,
And
Which brings me
but
to my next pet peeve is this idea of these interactive displays that we were talking about this before the show. We're trying to find the right interactive display. And Larry, you were looking for one. Like, hey, I need an interactive display, but I need one without all the extra crap. And
Stop with the extra crap.
yeah, Mark and I, years ago, we used to buy, it was an NEC, and they stopped making that one because they're like, there's no extra crap on this. Turn it off.
This works.
Get rid of
Get rid of that. We can't have that.
So, Jamie, to your point, there's all these the interactive displays seem to be the worst thing about it right now, or the worst about in general this bloat is like, here's this thing that has this one feature you think you need, but all this extra crap that you don't want, and then you'll find out one person is using they want the interactive display because they like the wireless sharing on it, and you're like, no. So they're using their wireless sharing device to do interactive displays, and they're using the interactive display to do their wireless sharing. It's like,
yeah, they'll
no,
pick
this-
the one feature, and that'll be the most popular part. It's
Typically, my rule of thumb is if I'm doing something integrated into a space, and if one of the steps is you must go to this app store, that's your flag right
Step
there.
one, log into Google Play with your personal account. Nope.
Yeah,
So-
that tells you right now you're probably not using it enterprise ready or commercial grade, since enterprise is the Wild West now. So
The other one I do have on the list here is this idea of announcementware or vaporware. Jamie, I know this was yours, so I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, it was really bad 7-8 years ago, right? All the companies, they were all wanting to be the first at something. I want to be the first, I want to be the first, I want to be the first. And they announced a bunch of stuff. In fact, one of the giant companies got so embarrassed that they may or may not have stopped coming to some of the big trade shows. One in particular.
Well, that
might
wasn't-
be a Tron.
That wasn't.
And there's some other things. But they would announce all these things, and it wouldn't come out. And then it got better. Like the companies caught on, and so they just kind of said, "Hey, okay, we're going to have this product. It will actually be available to you in 2 months." And within 3 months, it usually was. Recently, and I know there's other supply shortages and things, but I have seen an uptick in this vaporware of, hey, we're gonna bring out this thing, and it's gonna be awesome, and it's gonna be available to you. I was trying to order one, like last September.
Yeah, you were saying there's some companies now who will sell you this thing, which they do not have. It doesn't exist.
They had pricing. You can order it, and then it would say, well, it's not actually available yet. But wait, it says it is, but it's not. It's not really. And I know they're trying to get rid of old stock, so they don't want to. But it's just, I've seen an uptick in that. And there's been some like camera things. There's been some other stuff where it's just like software is getting that way. Hey, we got the new version of the software coming out. You're going to be able to do this thing, and then you can't. And for instance, I don't like it when a company in the same boat, right? They have this product, might be a little video switcher, maybe that an AV over IP video switching device that they say all of a sudden this announcement is, hey, with software it can now be a controller also, unless of course you bought it before this date, and then you don't get to do that. It's like, wait. It's the same SKU. It's the same box. I bought it a month ago. So you're telling me the one I bought 30 days ago is so much different than the one I just bought tomorrow. I just bought it tomorrow. Then I can't run the software on it. Yes. Horseshit.
Mm-hmm.
Can I buy a license for it? No.
Mm-mm. Doesn't exist. It's vaporware.
And it's just...
And some of those things are like, they may have changed a chip or something in there. But it's, to your point, it's got the same SKU, the same part number, same model number. So now you say, if I bought 20 last month and I bought 20 more this month, well, how do I know 3 years from now which ones do which features, and are there no different firmware versions? And it becomes a real pain in the butt.
Yeah. So once you start installing these, if you move one and you try to enable the capabilities, it then burps you out a warning. This is what you can't with this one because it was made 3 days before the cutoff.
Yeah, I've been burned by that. We try to standardize based upon experience of the user and the students, and basically
the absolute
shit
experience. Oh, no, just kidding.
The best
just
possible experience.
I'm giving you a hard time.
That's all of us. And, if you buy a part and there's different features and it's not firmware upgradable, then now you have the same standard part, the exact part for the exact cost, but different feature sets. So now you are not standardized on the experience, which is a stupid problem.
There are companies out there that will sell an idea before it ever exists just to see if there's interest in doing it. And then they'll go back and manufacture it after the fact once they pre-order, if they get enough. So I'm not saying everything is that way, but my guess is with everybody being locked up at home, like recently, you're probably seeing a lot of, let's test the waters. Would something like this actually make sense? Would somebody buy it? If we put out a press release and all of a sudden our email blows up that, yeah, we want it, when can we buy it? Okay, yeah, let's turn the factories on. We'll get them printing them out. But if
I hope they're not operating that way, but I think you're right. There's
they are. It's actually a part of business that operates that way.
It's one thing to say like, hey, what do you think about adding this feature set to this box because we can get it there in 3 months or 6 months or whatever. It's another thing to throw out an entirely new product line and then for it to not exist. And then Jamie's example is probably the most egregious one, is like ones where there's products announced, here's all the specs, here's its pricing. You can order it, but it's not actually shipping, with no notification that you won't get that in any sort of reasonable time frame. Yeah,
it wasn't until we actually started to try to obtain it that they said, oh, well, you won't actually get your hands on it for 5 months. So,
and that's a way
then change it. I don't want it.
I mean, a company can burn bridges industry-wide doing that sort of stuff.
So I've just seen an uptick in that, and it was, I know there's outside issues here, but I've just seen an uptick in it, and it's annoying me lately.
All right. Well, any other last general pet peeves? Manufacturers, other universities, integrators, anything out there that's really grinding your gears before we move on? It sounds like we all have a lot of general industry-wide pet peeves, and we could certainly go on, ad nauseum and with increasingly aggravating stories that gets our blood boiling. But
hostile in here.
We got to cut it off at some point.
So, but
now that we're all full of piss and vinegar, let's talk about something else.
In the interest of time, let's force a commercial right here.
As many of you know, the Super Friends have always been better received when we have more input from you. So, here's your chance. Send us a note at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com and get involved with the show. We're looking for some topics to discuss, some fellow nerds to talk to, or just general AV awesomeness to brag about. But remember, we'll probably steal your ideas. And I suppose we'd take some criticism, but that wouldn't be very nice. Anyway, drop us a note at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com and find out how quickly we ask you to join this nonsense.
All right, so for this segment, this was an article. I don't remember where I first saw this, but I apparently this came out in March, but I had not seen it. I don't go looking at the Zoom Help Center very often, but Zoom, the corporation Zoom, has put out their official recommendations for types of Zoom room systems, classroom, divisible spaces, carts. So it's an interesting take on things. It's not something I had realized existed, but if you start reading into it, they're not bad systems, but they're put together kind of in a weird way. It's like where they want to make sure that they use certain manufacturers for certain things, and that's fine because they do have this big Zoom partnership thing. So I don't know if everyone's looked at this, but if you get a chance, go look at the Zoom support.zoom help center, whatever. I'll put the link in.
Design guides is what
they have. Yeah, they have functionally their design guides here. And Jamie, you were saying you have some general knowledge on this from the standpoint of they have internal engineers who will help you design their systems, and so this is probably coming from that team.
Yeah, so a few years ago, they've had little sample ones for a while now. And they'll give you the schematic, the one lines, they'll give you the bill of materials.
Bill of materials, everything.
Last time I looked, it was like super basic high-level line drawings. That was it. But it was kind of like, hey, go build your own thing. But now it sounds like they're getting into if we have enough of these out there, we have to actually design systems.
Yes. And so when pre-pandemic, when Zoom Rooms really started to catch on, right? I knew a guy that went to work for them as just an installer of Zoom Rooms. And then Zoom kind of figured out that we can't just install all of these ourselves. Let's do these design guides. So they do have an internal design team. But what's weird and what's funky and what we're noticing, right? Because you can go there and check in, is that it's just like this, what did I say the other day? Like this trash can full of whiz bangs.
Hodgepodge. Yeah.
Like they have to use
devices in there, but they're
for example,
they're spreading it all over the place.
Have you seen the NDI design, Jamie, where they use NDI encoders, decoders for the content and not cameras? Have you seen that?
It's just and it's just what I found was that a lot of time, because like Chris said, these are solid designs. We're not bashing the design, right? They will work. What's weird about it is that it has all appearances, and I'm unofficially pretty sure that one of the reasons that it's so discombobulated is because they are trying to put in a lot of their partners, as many partners as they can.
Yeah, like every design has to include as many possible ones across the board. Like not like, oh, this one's focused on this manufacturer, or this one's that one's. Like, no, they're all involved in all of them, and it kind of gets weird.
Yeah, so you'll have cameras from two different companies. You'll have a DSP that could be the controller, but it's just the DSP, and they have a different controller controlling that one DSP, and sometimes it's not even what we would consider a pro AV controller, right? It's one of those prosumer do-it-yourselfer iPad, pictograph programming things, and it was really strange. And I looked at the job at one point, but they wanted me to travel 90% of the time. That's like what the job description was. Like 80% of the time you're on the road. I'm like, I don't think my 4 kids would appreciate that. My wife might not either.
I would, so I'm a
yeah, but I'm out. But it was really interesting, and when you brought it up, I re-looked at it because I don't look at them very often because I've gotten to the point where I really just don't care what they recommend. And that's the thing. That's the thing that stood out to me. It was like, geez Louise, how many different partners can we put in here? How many stickers and badges can we put on this thing? And at what point, as an end user, I'm trying to put myself in other shoes, right? Is that So I bought their kit. I downloaded this BOM, right? And all these things come from all these different manufacturers. At what point does that now today partner not actually exist tomorrow and it doesn't work anymore, right? But it, if I got, and these are just examples, a PTZ optics camera and a Huddle camera, they're not the same. So how do I deal with that? I also wonder too if they jump through the hoops of, on some of these USB products, if you had two cameras called the Jamie Cam, that the USB freaks out because you have two cameras that have the identical name. So I wonder if that's part of it.
It actually
is
works.
That's their way to avoid it, so that they have the Mark Cam and Jamie Cam and Larry Cam, and you're not having to pretend to rename stuff. I don't know, but it is interesting.
Yeah, we build Zoom rooms all the time, and what's weird is, and we're actually having this problem right now, we use a lot of AVIXA 540s, and natively in the Zoom rooms on the iPad, when you're controlling the camera, those control protocols are entirely over USB. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible to use a PTZ optics camera in a Zoom room, but you're gonna have to do some JSON scripting through Ethernet controls and do some weird stuff. Now you're back to custom programming, which is, a Zoom room is supposed to be turnkey, which is what IT managers want to see. You plug it up, no config, it works. Or maybe you rename the camera, presenter cam, audience cam. We do that all the time. So we use the same cameras in the Zoom rooms. But now AVIXA, we can't get the 540. So now we have to have a USB only camera, and we have to find a different one, which will probably just go to the next AVIXA down. But when AVIXA doesn't make that camera anymore, now we have to go find maybe a Huddly camera, and we don't know what the optics are. We don't know what the Zoom capabilities are, which are important when you're designing this crap. But we have to use this stupid son of a bitch over here because that's the only protocol that's going to work. Oh, and by the way, now we have to extend USB. Forget that. I'm done with extending USB.
There you go.
So this is my gripe on Zoom rooms. It's not professional AV, in my opinion. It's throwing, like you all said, a bunch of stuff together, putting it in front of a client and saying, do this and it'll work, but configure it in this way. And then you have to train around it. But if you do all these things and you put these restrictions around this system, it'll work, but you better ramp up your training.
But I think your training part is a big aspect of it, but there's elements of the Zoom room that is just different than the traditional Zoom experience that people are accustomed in their living room and the dining room that they're at home using right now, training themselves on. And
the biggest thing is the control interface, Mark.
Yeah, but there's also, like, when you start getting into like your LMS integrations and the recordings, who's managing all that stuff? Like right now, that stuff's just working. If you log into Zoom as yourself and you're in LMS and you're in an actual real environment, that stuff automates really clean in the back end. You throw a Zoom room into this thing, now you're having to retrain. Now you have a UI difference. You have the Zoom experience itself is fundamentally different in the Zoom room versus just the traditional desktop application. We thought about this really long and hard. And yes, we went to the Tchotchke charts that they had and looked at it, and it's like,
charts.
It was cool. Yeah, could I do this? Yeah, but I could also give you that same experience with stuff that's in my stable right now, and probably deliver a supportable experience cleaner than what that stuff is. Now, if there's somebody out there or a university or whatever it is that has never installed anything, needs a collaboration ready space and wants to have an off the shelf thing that Mr. IT desktop imaging person may have an awareness of what these things are, they could probably open up the box from Amazon and put this together and have some level of experiential success. I don't think it's going to be aesthetically pleasing from the installation standpoint, but will it work and will they be able to communicate to and fro? Probably, but I do not think it's at a good standard to build around in a classroom experience.
I agree. And the reason, here's the only difference, as far as what we see between a Zoom capable room or a Zoom room. We can deliver the same exact experience, except for one caveat. The way we are set up, we cannot auto kick off a Zoom capable room. Now, I know it's possible. I don't want to hear, you could do this, you could do that. I understand. And I've talked about that. But because of the way we are set up, everybody wants to kick off these rooms through the Zoom dashboard. And so it has to be a Zoom room to do that. And, you know, there's also the licensing fees, which also irk me per year forever and ever and ever and ever. So what's your total cost of ownership for that one feature set, that one little thing, to have a teacher walk into a room where the meeting's already on versus the teacher walk into a room and hit 2 buttons and they're in the meeting? How much are you paying for that additional experience additive?
Is that a need to have or a nice to have feature?
Exactly.
I think it's categorized wrong.
Yeah. And you know, the whole start of this wasn't necessarily the debate of Zoom rooms, but the interesting aspect of their design, right? That really, for a lot of us, well, I know for sure for the 5 of us, right? When we design a system and we look at that, we're like, well, why would we do this? And to Mark's point, what they propose will work.
Why would you put Dante on the network? Well, because you have to. There's the way we set it up.
There inherently isn't anything wrong. It's just not what we would do, and it's interesting that they did it that way.
Yeah, and Jamie, I think that my interest in this was not so much that this exists, but the Zoom room, and Mark, you were talking about it a minute ago, the Zoom rooms are often a very, and I mean Zoom room, the product,
the actual Zoom room,
a Zoom room product, is very attractive especially from a corporate or an IT standpoint, because they are easy to deploy. They use, it's kind of limited in scope, but it does what it does. It does that very well. It has a limited interface, and off you go. It's super easy. The systems here are, I think, truly in the commercial AV category. None of this stuff is something you can hand off to your desktop IT team and have them deploy. So it's kind of this weird, like, if you're at this level, if you're putting in NDI transport and QSys cores and Shure microarrays, you've got an AV team or you're hiring an integrator to do it. So it's kind of weird that this exists. So maybe it's out there as here's an idea, but then you get this weird thing where they're trying to use every possible manufacturer they can. So it's an odd thing that it exists out there.
It is strange, and the fact that like a QSC, right? It's like, but you've got to be able to program that, and
that's why we don't use DSPs in our Zoom rooms. Like, we have stripped our Zoom rooms down to literally plug and play. So all the design guides are just suggestions on how to do certain things differently, but you don't have to do it that way. It just still deliver the same experience.
Just examples. I think I took a lot away from here. And I don't want to like give the impression that like I'm anti-Zoom room, because there is a space and a place for this. And one of the, if you peruse their offerings there, one of them that's really nice is actually that automated like help desk / feature where you like, that is a really clever use. And that product as a Zoom room, it works really well. And we're actually seeing a lot of requests for that. And it's a way to augment and allow people to kind of make use of remote workers and kind of have that walk-up service. Like, that is a really clever integration. I think that as a Zoom room, it's a product is really nice. And also like small conference rooms, things like that, all day long, you can have success in it. But when we start getting into the larger spaces, it seems to deviate a little bit too much for me.
And I just want to say, the one that caught my eye that I just like as far as being clever, actually, in the Zoom is not the part about that's really clever so much as that is the one that they have. I think it's called their hybrid cart classroom or something like that, where the idea is you have to roll this into a space because it didn't have anything before, and we need a bunch of these. But they're stacking 2 monitors so they can show here's content plus everybody who's remote, because there's some people in the room, and that still allows some visual that there are other people in the class that I can't see because they're not in my room, but they're over there, and the people, then they have the camera. This is what I like. They have the camera at that display. So if I look over at the rest of the fellow students, they're kind of looking back at me because their view is from that display. So that's kind of a nice little Benny there as part of their design. So this in general caught my eye. Again, I think we could go all day long on Zoom rooms and the quirks of it, and we've deployed them with various success. Justin's had a great success with Zoom rooms. Others of us are fighting licensing things and all sorts of weird issues with it. But it's something that is not going anywhere. These kind of turnkey, maybe is it fair to call them limited feature? But we know what they do, and more importantly, we know what they don't do. Yeah. Because if we want something that does more than that, we can custom design a space for you all day long. We have dozens of them on campus, and we hate to try to make them different, but every now and then we have to refresh that. But I think a Zoom room kind of lives in a box, and I guess I phrase it that way in the sense where we know what it is. It fits within this structure, and we don't want to try to make it go out of there. But oftentimes we see the scenario like this that Zoom has proposed. Here's a commercial training room. It's like that's now you're kind of in a weird space where I'm not really comfortable with that being the solution. I mean, that's their company. They have the internal teams to do this. That's great, but it may not be the best solution for everybody. All right, well, let's wrap that up. So, any last thoughts on Zoom rooms with Zoom, any of that? We got about 30 seconds here, and we're gonna roll out. But I want to open it back up to the floor here.
Yeah,
it
would be interesting if we get
start talking.
Everybody at once.
Be interesting if we get a phone call on this one. That's what would be interesting.
Right,
my only thought is space matters, especially with acoustics, and by having this one size fit all, if you are in that small university mode and you're planning on rolling these out, just know that you might have to adjust based upon the space it's going in.
Just like every AV design, but yes,
not
exactly
that you might
correct.
have to adjust. You're going to have to do some adjustment, so keep that in mind. It is interesting, by the way, to your point, Larry, about the space itself. A lot of these Zoom designs actually include furniture recommendations too. Hey, get tables like this, set a display up like that. And I was like, that's kind of an interesting take that I don't think we always include that as part of an AV bill of materials, but maybe we start thinking about that too, because your point is 100% valid that a quote unquote standard classroom is very different from building to building, space to space, because of the acoustics and the lighting and the amount of, the ceiling height and the types of materials on the floor, and that all can affect those designs. So
not at my place. It's all the same.
It's all exactly the same.
Everywhere has carpet and sound panels and everything.
All the same.
Asbestos walls.
It's all the same except when it's not.
Perfect.
Everything is the same because it's based on them taking over a former prison. So it's just concrete walls and concrete floors. All right. Well,
but you can hose it out. Just bring the hose in. There's a drain in the middle of it.
And that does have added benefits for a lot of types of courses. So I think we've beaten this one into the ground. Let's let people have some time back, and we'll catch them next time. Thanks for listening, folks. Well, we've managed to ruin yet another episode of AV Super Friends Off the Rails. You can contact us with questions, topic ideas, or general complaints at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com. If you complain loud enough, we might just invite you on the show.
Nice work, everyone. Sharp broadcast. Really good. Everyone on the floor as well. Really a lot of hustle. I liked it.
The opinions expressed by the AV Super Friends are solely those of the individuals and do not represent their respective institutions, organizations, companies, or clients.